right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jason Bush. I'm an account executive for education customers based here in the Midwest. So I work out of the Minneapolis office for Jamf Software. So thank you for coming to my hometown if you came from afar. I really appreciate that. This session, Teaching Students Ethics and Responsibility Through the Use of Technology with Damian Barrett, comes out of last year. I had the opportunity to meet Damian, and he, quite frankly, blew my mind with his philosophy and his school's take on what they allowed their students to do at their school. I work with a lot of customers in the early stages of planning one-to-one deployments, planning for iPad releases, and so many conversations I have are about how do we restrict access to this? How do we lock down that? And Damian's approach was really refreshing because it's the exact opposite of that. And it was, how do we empower students to do the things that they need to do? And through talking to him, I realized their school is preparing the next generation of us, of IT administrators, of people that work in technology, because he's giving them the tools that they'll need to be successful when they go to college and when they go to work. So I came back from meeting him and said to Cam, we got to get Damian to do a session next year, and he graciously accepted the challenge and came to talk to you guys today about how his school in New Jersey, Montclair Kimberly Academy, accomplishes that. So please welcome Damian Barrett.
All right. All right, thank you very much. So who's this Damian Barrett guy, right? Well, I'm a cat with a pink wig, right? You guys have all seen this before? You'll see as I go through my session, there's a distinct theme that I've put through. I hope you enjoy it. I am a system technician at Montclair Kimberly Academy, but that's not where I started. I started my Apple career about 20 years ago, managing Mac labs in a university, and then started teaching school and taught public school for 4 years, and then moved on to doing Mac administration and Mac consulting in Manhattan. Worked at a television station, worked at another university, and then landed at MKA about 5 years ago. All right, MKA is a pre-K through 12 independent school in northern New Jersey. We have about 1,000 students across 3 different campuses: a primary school, a middle school, and an upper school. The grades 4 through 12 have 13-inch MacBook Airs in a one-to-one environment. So every student from 4th to 12th grade has a 13-inch MacBook Air. At the primary school, we have iPad carts and 11-inch laptop Airs in carts. This is the chief goal for our one-to-one program: to teach good digital citizenship and good stewardship of the technology. Right, so look at it this way, right? This generation coming up behind us, this generation right now, these kids don't know anything other than access to technology. And for them, it's like breathing, right? You've probably seen this. What happens if you have a child and you take that technology away? They very quickly become agitated, upset. And if you start to go this route, you very quickly realize that we can't take this away. We have to embrace it. We have to allow them to use the technology in lots of different environments and learn how to use it appropriately. We use technology to teach ethics and responsibility. And we like to foster a sense of ownership of the laptop. Now, technically, that laptop is owned by MKA, right? But we don't necessarily tell the students that explicitly. We say, this is your laptop. This is being assigned to you. You are allowed to use it 24/7, 365. We do not pull the laptops back in the summertime. This model mirrors the real world. Just as if the student leaves high school and they go to college, and before they go to college, they go to the Apple store and they buy a Mac. And then they go home. What kind of administrator are they? They're an admin. This model's the real world. In most traditional one-to-one environments, machines are locked down, right? You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. No, 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 no. All they hear is a chorus of no's. This is mostly, I think, a holdover from enterprise environments. So what happens if you lock the machines down? What happens? Yeah, right? You guys, it's a rhetorical question. What happens? The students spend lots of time trying to get around your limits. And I put a little graphic up there, right? Jail cat is in jail. And a great quote, one of my favorites from Eldridge Cleaver. In prison, those things withheld or denied to the prisoner become precisely what he wants most of all. How many of you have seen this before? Yeah, I have. I've seen students, it's almost as if they're put in a cage. There's a rat in a cage. And they'll gnaw their arm off to get out of that cage. So our philosophy is don't put them in the cage. Here are some recent examples from the Jamf Nation boards about people asking, which they're allowed to do, of course, ask, how do I limit this or how do I limit that? Here's somebody who wants to block software update. They don't want it to come up at all. Here's somebody saying, how do I use configuration profiles to limit what can be done on a laptop? And here's somebody saying, how do I block access to terminal? I don't want my students to run terminal. So just a few examples, and there's hundreds of these on the Jamf boards if you go look. At our school, every student, except for a few, is an administrator of the laptop. This allows students to feel ownership of the laptop. They are allowed to install software. They're allowed to run updates. They're allowed to be full users of the machine. And this is really important. They're taught proper care and feeding of the laptop. They're taught how to run the software update. They're taught how to clean it. We teach them, this is how you clean your laptop. Windex and paper towels. It's important that if you go this route, that you have an acceptable use policy that clearly defines what's allowed and what's not allowed. More specifically, what's not allowed. MKA has a fairly extensive acceptable use policy. It is available on our website. You can find it at mka.org. You can also find it linked to from driversmanual.mka.org. There'll be a link here in a little bit. Okay. Again, this model is the real world. A student leaves the high school. They've been taught how do I run software updates, how do I install a piece of software, how do I do X, Y, and Z. They go to college. They're already ready to be a good administrator of the laptop. They don't have to rely on somebody looking over their shoulder to help them install a printer or run an update. Okay. I said earlier, students keep the laptops 24/7, 365 for 3 years, and then we swap them out. And again, the chief goal is to empower students to be good users and stewards of that technology. All right? This is important. This includes teaching them how to back the computer up. Now, fortunately, Apple's made it fairly easy for us with Time Machine. So we give every student an external hard drive. And we say, plug this in every night. Just as you're plugging your hard drive, your computer in to charge the battery, plug in your external hard drive and let the backup run. This becomes very important when it comes time to do your laptop swap. You hit 3 years, you swap them out. We just completed this last summer. We migrated from 2010 MacBook Pros to 2012 MacBook Airs. And we did all of the migration from the external hard drives that students were using to back up to. So by teaching them the skill, we didn't have to do any extra work. It was already set to go. Now, was it 100%? Of course not. But it was pretty good buy-in. It was like 80–85%, way higher than I thought. I was looking at 50%, maybe a little higher. And we had 80–85% buy-in where students had backed up the night before or that morning, before the migration occurred. These are a couple things in our acceptable use policy. I'm not going to list everything, of course. We do not allow virtualization software to be run on the machine or installed on the computer. And that isn't because we're anti-Windows or anti-Linux or anti-other OSs. It's because we don't have the support staff to support unsupervised Windows environments on our network. It's a very simple policy. And we tell the students that, and they kind of nod, and that's the end of it. We simply don't have the staff for it. We do not allow P2P software, and that's simply for legal reasons. And this software is blocked using restricted processes. This is very, very important. The AUP is married to our established code of conduct and honor code. We are a private school, so we're allowed to, we have a little bit of latitude that a public school might not have. And we have every student following a code of conduct and an honor code. And if that honor code or that code of conduct is violated, then there become consequences for that. And so our AUP is married to that. The two were taught side by side. And the students must not change certain network settings or system settings. An example would be like the computer name. We tell them, please do not change the computer name. Or do not turn Apple Remote Desktop off. And do not enable your firewall. Are a couple examples of things they're not allowed to do.
Must not or
Must not. Because they're administrators, so they're they're able to go in and make those changes. We tell them, please do not do this. And I have, a little bit later on, I'll show you, I have some extension attributes that I've put in place that help me detect whether those settings have been changed or not. This is a fairly novel approach, and so we felt we needed to have kind of a novel solution. What we came up with was the MKA driver's manual. Just like everybody has to learn how to drive a car, go through driver's training before they can drive, we say to the students, you need to go and study this driver's manual and know it, and you have to know it very well, or you're not going to be allowed to be an administrator. Students begin the year as administrators. They have until the last day of September to pass the test, or they get their administrator rights revoked. And this is available online. You can go take a look at it, driversmanual.mk.org. Here's an example, screenshot. You guys like Toonces, right? Remember Toonces, the driving cat? Okay. A couple examples of things. I'm not going to read it all to you, but our AUP is linked up in here, as well as we have things about backing up security, good habits. Okay. Here's another example of common problems. So this is all things that students need to know, at which time they're asked to take the driver's test. This is an example of a video created by one of our laptop leaders, which I'll talk about in a few minutes.
A cracked screen is damage to the screen of your laptop, caused by dropping it or banging it against a hard object. Cracked screens look like a web of crooked lines all over the screen and sometimes cause color distortion of the images on the screen. If your screen is cracked, it is important that you get it fixed as soon as possible to avoid further damage to the computer or possible injury from broken glass. If your screen cracks during school, go to the tech center. If it cracks out of school, file a help desk ticket and go to an authorized Apple service provider. A cracked screen constitutes hardware damage and will require a replacement screen, so you'll have to pay the $250 deductible to get your new screen, and you'll have to use a loaner laptop while yours is being repaired. You can prevent cracked screens in several ways: by wearing your case, by not putting papers between the screen and the keyboard, by not piling heavy things on top of your computer, and by holding your laptop in a closed position when walking or standing.
Right, so there's a perfect example of a video created by our students reinforcing what's taught in the driver's manual. Good, proper behavior. Don't pile things on your laptop. Keep your case on it. Don't put papers between the screen and the machine and close it. And we have dozens of these videos on that website if you'd like to take a look at them. The driver's test, that's the test taken after they've studied the driver's manual. It's hosted on our learning management system. We use Moodle. Students must get 100% on the test. And they may take it as many times as they wish. The questions do scramble. the order does scramble, but the questions don't change. They just scramble the order. Okay. And then remember, the goal is true assessment of the knowledge. It's not about penalizing or overly limiting the functionality of the machine. We want to make sure that every single student who's an administrator truly knows what's in our driver's manual. Here's an example of a few questions on the driver's test. Okay, example, asking them to identify a minor violation of the AUP. Which of the following is a major violation of the AUP? Because we do have our AUP broken down into minor violations and major violations, and we expect students to know the difference between the two. And then we also teach them things like good password habits, right? A very valuable skill. Okay. We have a laptop leadership group that's about 30 students across our middle school and upper school campuses. These are students that apply for the position, and they serve a very, very important role in our one-to-one program. They assist in our decision-making. Very few decisions are made about our one-to-one program or about our technology without the input of our students. They act as just-in-time support in our classroom. Each one of them has a colored case on their laptop instead of a clear case, and so they're very easily identifiable by a teacher in the classroom. You know, oh, he has a red case, he's a laptop leader. And then the teacher can ask that student, oh, I need help with a projector. And since we've done a lot of extra training with the laptop leaders, they know how to solve some of the very common problems that come up. It provides a leadership opportunity for some students who might not otherwise get that opportunity. Okay. They model appropriate technology use. And they assist our faculty professional development training that happens every June. We call it Tech Institute. They actually lead sessions for our faculty on how to use Evernote or how to use a particular piece of software. Every summer, I take a handful of these laptop leaders and I train them to be Apple certified Macintosh technicians. We go through all of Apple's training materials, and at the end, they take the test at Prometric, and they become certified repair technicians, who then repair equipment under my guise. If you can do this, do it. This will save you amazing amounts of time, because then you have your students doing the display replacement, or the hard drive replacement, or the optical drive replacement. And you're free to then do other things. It's also a really important and very valuable skill for them. These students can then leave the school having that certification and having hands-on experience with hardware repair. They act as my beta testers. I have a script I want to test out. Hey guys, I got something new for you to try. We fire it off, scope them to a group, and they get back to me on what kind of problems they see. At the upper school, they work at the help desk 1 hour per week, or 1 hour per cycle. And they actually man the help desk. It's set up very much like a Genius bar, and they answer questions that come in. Student comes in for help. They're there, they're acting as the face of the program. And they help to create the documentation that we have for our program, like the video that you saw in the driver's manual. The philosophy at MKA is that we stand on 3 pillars. For a long time, the school rested on this idea of academic rigor, right? Academics were really important. And that's been that way for the 125 years of the school. 125 years our school's been in existence. About 20 years ago, we introduced ethics. And so the school began to rest on 2 pillars, academics and ethics. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we introduced technology. And these 3 things are what our school now rests upon. And like 3 legs of a stool, you take any one of those legs away and it becomes an unstable structure. And what's important to understand is that we don't teach these things in isolation. We teach these things together. We teach academic rigor right alongside ethics, right alongside technology. Benefits of the program, students learn to be good technology caretakers. Right? That's the little gist of our program. What do we want to teach them? When we started to look at this program 7, 8 years ago, we were kind of coming at it from a technology viewpoint, a technology perspective. And we said, well, initially we said, yeah, we're going to lock all the computers down. No, students can't be administrators. And that was our initial thought about this. And then we started to get people involved from the education technology department. And then we started to get people involved from the admissions department and the administration. And then we started to get students involved. And by having all of these disparate groups of people involved in how we were going to roll this one-to-one out, our perspective began to change about why we were installing this technology and why we were implementing this technology and spending a lot of money to do this. And our perspective went from being kind of technology focused to being like education focused. And we began to realize that by providing a laptop that's locked down with no admin access, you're limiting what can be done on that laptop. And you're limiting the kinds of things that a student can do. And you're not empowering that student, you're taking that power away. So as such, it increases some of the self-reliance. You know, if you've never seen it, take a 10-year-old, give him a laptop, and show him how to compile a program or execute a script or do something that's, you know, kind of different and cool. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's a very empowering thing for a younger child. This is my favorite one, right? This reduces the amount of time that I spend doing all the busy work. Oh, you need Firefox updated? Okay, I'll update your Firefox. Students do the updates themselves. They keep Firefox up to date, Chrome up to date, the OS up to date, everything, Evernote, all of it. And again, it mimics the real world. I mean, let me ask you, would you rather have a student leave the school knowing how to be a good administrator or not having any experience being an administrator? I know which way I'd go. It's not all roses, right? It's not all roses. There are some challenges. And we've worked our way through some of these challenges. And one of them is that there will always be students, always, that are going to challenge the boundaries of that box that you've put them in. Always. It doesn't necessarily negate the effect of the program. And so you just have to have an acceptable abuse policy in place and have policies in place that allow a student to explore but still keep him or her safe. It does increase the number of reimaging transfers because students are bricking their machines. Well, you messed up your operating system. Sorry, Johnny. Got to reinstall. And so that happens. Less than you might think, but more than if the machines were locked down. And in the case of a transfer, if the student doesn't have a backup, we tell them, sorry, you clearly don't care about your data, so why should we? Right? It's the truth. And we tell the students that because that's a hard life lesson. Oh, you haven't been backing up? Sorry. Look, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to get your data off this hard drive. I'll give it a couple hours of my time. But if that hard drive's dead and you don't have a backup, sorry. And that happens. And you know what? It only happens once. Right? It only happens once. Okay? You need to have a robust network. Do not implement a one-to-one program of any sort unless you've already done some evaluation of your network and your Wi-Fi. Fortunately, we did. We rolled out a new Wi-Fi network and faster bandwidth before we pushed the button on our one-to-one. At the end, if there's time, ask me about some of the tools we use for content filtering and firewalls and so forth. This is pretty important. We spent quite a amount of time working with our faculty body and our parent body and our student body, educating them about our one-to-one program. We held information sessions about once a month for about a year, where we invited the community in and said, this is what we're doing. What kind of questions do you have? And it wasn't just the technology department at these sessions. It was technology, education technology, administration, students, PAMCA, which is our PTA, okay, curriculum specialists. The whole school was represented at these meetings. And we felt that by doing these information sessions, it actually canceled a lot of the blowback that might have happened otherwise. At the middle school level, we actually asked the parents sign off on administrator access. And that's really an age issue. There's issues involving COPA and under 13. And we feel that while we can certainly allow a 10 or 11-year-old to be an administrator, we want the parents to be involved enough to know what's happening. All students must still pass the driver's test, regardless of whether they're admins or non-admins. And so far, I think we only have just a small handful of parents who have said at the middle school level, no, I don't want my child to be an admin. It's a count on one hand how many it is. Casper allows me to engineer solutions to some of these problems. We do keep tabs on the laptops, but it's not Big Brotherish. It's not Orwellian or anything. It's just so that I know what kind of software has been installed on the laptop, how many hours a piece of software has been used in a day, those kinds of things. Whether a student has changed a setting that they're not allowed to change. Okay, examples would be application usage, which applications have been installed. I use extension attributes to collect information. Okay, a few examples. This is a screenshot of a student's day. You'll see he was playing Half-Life 2 for an hour and 1 minute, right? Okay, so in my video in the keynote, I talked about a student who was playing World of Warcraft for an excessive number of hours. Same kind of a thing. If we have an advisor come to us and say, I have a student who's failing a lot of tests, I think he's been spending too much time gaming, can we look at the application usage and find out? And so this is a very valuable tool that Casper allows us to do. Advanced searches, right? You guys know this, you can set searches up to look for something that's been changed on the laptop, okay? I can, a couple examples, find out whether a student is, if I want to find out which students aren't admins, very quickly do a search. If I want to find out if somebody's logged in as the MK admin user, okay, because that should really only be me and Mike, that's it. Okay. Smart groups, okay. You can set up detection of examples would be like when the flashback came out. I wanted to find out if anybody had inadvertently installed flashback, so I quickly wrote a little EA that went out and detected whether that flashback virus had been installed on the machine. Restricted processes. Not a perfect solution, but a pretty good first level of detection. We do not allow P2P software to run on our laptops. And so we simply put a restricted process in place that blocks and then deletes that application that was detected. Now, any student who's at all technical knows that this is pretty easy to get around, but most of them don't. And if they do, and I still then detect that that software has been installed, then it's an AUP violation, which becomes a discipline issue and gets passed on to the discipline committee. Extension attributes, here's an example of one that I wrote that detects whether they've turned off ARD. Okay. And here's a screenshot of a configuration profile that limits where applications can be run from. Okay. Self-service is your friend. It can teach cats to feed themselves. Okay. All right. Use it, and it gets better and better and better. The self-service in Casper 9 is great. Okay. Here's an example of applications that students can install from self-service on our systems. This is how we manage our printers. Students and faculty both are allowed to install printers. Okay. If we happen to have a student who's not an administrator and they need to install a printer, they can do it from here. Or if they're at home, they can run that little tool right up there. Somebody else was talking about this earlier today, that adds their user to the LP admin group so they can install a printer at home, regardless of whether they're an administrator or not. And then I have a couple other things. Spotlight index is sometimes squirrely. And so if we have a student experiencing a problem with Spotlight searching and we tell them just push this button, it'll rebuild your Spotlight index, problem should be solved. So in conclusion, don't be afraid to empower your users. Make them do your job for you. Allow them to do your job for you, right? Because in the end, it benefits everybody. It benefits you because you're not constantly spending your time doing busy work. It benefits them because they get the responsibility of keeping their systems up to date and mimicking the real world. Be sure that your environment can support this kind of a setup. We happen to be a private school, so we have quite a bit of latitude in what we can do. Public schools might, well, they do operate under different kinds of rules. It still doesn't mean it can't happen. It absolutely can happen, but it's up to you to evaluate whether you can do this in your school system. And lastly, leverage Casper. It's an incredibly flexible and agile tool. We use it all the time. And one of the things that I tell my boss all the time is that without Casper, we'd have to hire another person. Okay. So Casper is our other employee. Okay. All right. Questions and answers. Up here in the red. Yeah. Yep. How do we keep them from removing the Jamf framework? Well, the short answer is we don't. But if I detect a machine that's bad, that hasn't been on the network for 6 or 7 days, I go and find it. And if I detect it, then you can go through bash history and find out whether a student has removed it. And if they have, then that becomes an AUP violation. Yep, who has the teeth on the AUP? That is an administrative issue, the dean of students. Yep, right here in the middle. Absolute, great question. Excellent question. Do you have an AUP for your faculty? Yes, we do. It is almost exactly the same as the AUP for the students. With a couple other issues, we have a social networking policy that we've put in place for our faculty. Basically saying you're allowed to do this and this and this, but not this and this and this.
Is that available?
I believe that, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. That might be internal only. Okay. The student one is. Over here on the left.
Do you make your faculty go through the driver's test?
Yes, we do. Faculty must also pass the driver's test.
Yeah. What about parents that have to sign off for middle schoolers?
One more time, please.
What about parents that have to sign off for middle schoolers? Do they have to go through any kind of training or?
No, parents do not have. Parents who don't sign off on anything, parents do not have to take the driver's test. No. In the green shirt. Yeah, it's through the question was what's the actual process that students get the driving lessons? A lot of it is online, a lot of it is self-guided, but not all of it. Particularly at the 4th grade level, where students are introduced into the one-to-one environment, the 4th graders are given actual in-class sessions taught by our education technology staff. And Mike Alexander, who is here with me. 4th graders are taught actually in the classroom about proper care and feeding, proper administrative rights and so forth. Okay. And then at the upper school, we do 9th grade orientation. So if you have a brand new 9th grader, they go through some of the same stuff. Any other questions? In the back in the middle.
How old's your first group of like the very beginning when you started this program? How old are they now, and how are they different from, say, students that are less familiar?
I think I understand the question. You said how old are...
Yeah, how long has it been in place, and with the students that are used to this system,
Okay. His question was, let me paraphrase this. How do you deal with a student who might come into the school without having any kind of prior experience being an admin?
I suppose since they've grown, the kids that start with it, since they've grown with it, as time goes on, are you finding that they're less?
Well, let me give you a little bit more background about the one-to-one. That may help explain some of what we're doing. We started our one-to-one 3 years ago, but we prepared for our one-to-one starting about 8 years ago. So we actually spent many years ahead of time preparing for this and putting in place a lot of these things that I talked about today. We've certainly had students who started the program who have since graduated and have gone away to college. And we've gotten feedback from them. Our alumni department is great about staying in communication with students who have left the school. And the feedback we've gotten from them has been great. They say, thank you for teaching me how to be an administrator. I know how to take care of my computer at college. And so we've gotten very important feedback and very valuable feedback from that. And I think also that this generation coming up right now, they're so much more tech savvy than previous generations. And I started the session talking about that technology is like breathing. It's just there. It's there all the time. And students come to expect it. And one of the hurdles we had to get over was this idea of distraction in the classroom. Right? We had some faculty, not very many, just a handful, that were pretty upset that we were putting technology in the classroom. And to those faculty, we said some of what I've been saying today. This is a very valuable tool, and you should work to embrace it instead of rejecting it. And most of them have come around. We still do have just a very small number who still don't like the technology, and then it's their prerogative. If they tell the students, put your laptops away, it's their classroom, and they're allowed to do that. But that's very much a minority. Most of the teachers we have on staff have embraced the technology and have come up with some very innovative ways of using it in the classroom. Question right here.
As far as Casper and Jamf, are you just using that to report whether a student has changed any of the settings, or do you change it back and then also get a report that it had to be changed?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. I'm doing both. His question was, am I using Casper to only detect changes? Or am I using Casper to detect changes and then revert them? In some cases, like a computer name, I just simply revert it automatically. In other cases where it's not something that can be reverted easily, that's when we take action upon it. We call the student in and say, what are you doing? Right? And have that conversation. And we've had some fairly uncomfortable conversations. I won't go into it, but we've had a couple students who have had to leave the school. Yeah, not over the summer, surprisingly. Fairly small number over the summer. The loss that we see tends to be loss that a teacher or a faculty member or a student leaves their laptop in their car, and they go into the supermarket, and they come back out, and it's gone. It is unique that we let our students take the laptop home over the summer. I haven't heard of hardly any other one-to-one programs that do that. And we do that because we don't want the students to have 2 laptops. We want them to have 1. And we are an affluent school, and so for them to go out and buy another laptop or have their parents buy another laptop is nothing for them. And so we tell them, this is yours. You're allowed to do almost anything on it. Use it, love it, it's yours. Treat it with kindness, treat it with care. Be a good steward of that laptop. Learn how to be a good administrator. And I think so far it's been very successful. I'm sorry, I can't see you all the way up there. The lights are terrible. All the way up in the back.
What's your social networking policy for students whose age is not the level to be on social networking?
The question is, what is our social networking policy for students? We do not block Facebook. We do not block YouTube. If a student wants to break the rules and create their own Facebook account when they're 12, that's not really up for us to say. We tell them they shouldn't do it, but we certainly have had students do it. And if it becomes a problem, if we end up having like Facebook pranking, then it becomes a disciplinary issue. And that's the whole key. You're starting to get a trend, right? It comes back around to be a disciplinary issue. So our Dean of Students spends quite a bit of time working on these issues that come up. Bullying or Facebook pranks or so forth. Right there. Green shirt and then the back.
With the success you're having with teaching ethical use, have you considered extending that to actual dropping content filter?
You know, we haven't talked about dropping our content filter. And I think that's because in New Jersey, and I'm not a lawyer, don't quote me on this, but I believe New Jersey schools, public and private, are required to have a content filter. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And so while the students are at school, content's filtered. When they're at home, it's not up to us, it's up to the parents. And we tell the parents that. And that was what came out of our meetings that we had with our parent body. Quite a few of them were like, what are you gonna do about my kid at home, you know, surfing pornography? And we tell them, that's not our problem. That we can recommend a content filter for you on your network, but we can't support it, right? And again, that mimics the real world. We'll help them as much as we can, but we're not gonna go to their house to install the content filter. Okay, and again, public school is a little different than private school, so you have to kind of weigh how things work in your environment. Right here.
Actually, along the same line, we had the same thing. One of the parents wanted to filter at home, but they can't install software. So in your hand, you ever have parents who want to install maintenance software?
Yes. His question is, what do you tell a parent who wants to install a piece of software, you know, Net Nanny or some other piece of software that has content filtering? We tell them that you're trying to provide a technological solution to a social problem. And we tell them that it's not up to us to decide what happens in your household. But if you suspect that you're having this kind of problem, that you don't allow your child to take their laptop into the bedroom. You have them use it in a public space. You guys have all heard these, right? And that works fairly well. And that's, again, we don't have any control over that. We're not in their house dictating their rules of their household. And so we tell them, look, this is a tool for your child to use. And we're doing our best to teach them ethical responsibility and ethical use of it. So should you. Right? Does that answer that?
That's pretty much what we tell them now.
Yeah.
That doesn't always.
Well, I can't fix that. I can do a lot. I can't fix that. So over here.
Quick thing on the content filter question. With, at our school, we let our high school students override the content filter by authenticating themselves. That's been very interesting in teaching them to be responsible. But my question is, how do you recruit the students to help you out?
Right. The question is, how do we recruit students to be part of the laptop leadership group? Believe it or not, it's actually a fairly prestigious position in our school. We actually have quite a few applications every year. They get early access to things like, in fact, they'll get early access to Mavericks once it's released. And so we tell the students, no, it's an AUP violation to upgrade, please don't do it. But then if you're in the laptop leadership group, you get early access to that as part of our beta testing pool. And so it's a fairly prestigious group. And so we put an application process out. We have the students fill out an application. Those applications come back in, and they're peer reviewed by other laptop leaders. They're reviewed by myself and the other people in the education technology department, at which point we decide, is this a student? We also get feedback from the advisors and also the peer leaders, and saying, do you think the student be a good addition to the program or not? Okay. Over here.
Along these lines, how do you know, like, I understand your staff is a desk for an hour a week, a cycle, but how do you justify that, like, they're paying tuition for an education and then yet they're doing tech work?
The way our block scheduling is set up is students have free periods. Sometimes they're study halls, sometimes there's just a free period. And so we schedule them 1 hour per block during one of their free periods. And they're obligated to do it. If they have some other event that conflicts, we're flexible. And so the justification is that they're getting some fairly valuable experience working that help desk. And we've actually had feedback from that as well. Students who have left the school who have worked the help desk and have come back and said, you know, a year later, come back and said, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to be, you know, the face of the program and for having me work the help desk, because it gave me skills that I might not have otherwise gotten somewhere else. Okay. Any other questions? Up here. You gonna try again?
How has the number of disciplinary incidents changed?
The question is, how have the number of disciplinary incidents changed since the one-to-one program? I don't have any hard numbers for you because I don't work in that department. I do know that I do occasionally get called in to do like a forensics examination of a laptop to find out whether something has happened or not. And at that point, if I'm being called in, it's already a disciplinary issue. So have the numbers gone up? I don't know. I don't have any numbers to share with you on that. I don't think they have, but I couldn't tell you with any certainty. And, yeah. So a very small number of our students in the laptop leadership program do go through the training. Every summer, it's approximately 4. One summer, we had 5. And those are students who are upperclassmen, so they have to be 9th through 12th graders. We essentially pick the students that are the most interested and the ones that we feel will be the most, that we get the most out of it. We did have a student who go through it once who then decided he didn't really care for it, but that happens. It happens. So it's not really a big selection process. It's, hey, we're offering this, are you interested? And then if we feel that they'd be a good addition to learn the ACMT certification, we walk them through it. Yes. Yeah. The school pays for their exam. It's not a lot of money. It's a couple $100. Here.
Is there a set term for the students that are these laptop leaders? I mean, if you get somebody in 6th grade, do they do it for 6 years?
Yep.
Yeah.
The question is there a set term? Is there a set time limit for a laptop leader? If a student comes in the 6th grade, do they continue through indefinitely or do they leave the program? It is a voluntary program, so students may leave at any point. If they decide that they have something else they'd rather be doing, some other activity, some other club, something sport or something, we say, thank you for your service. Have a nice day. Otherwise, it's indefinite. Although I believe this is changing this year. I'd have to confirm that with Mr. Richards, but I'm pretty sure it's changing and that when they hit 9th grade, we ask them to reapply.
So how do you, it sounded like it was capped at 30 students and you get more applications than
Yes.
you have availability. So how do you keep people from being locked out? People don't leave voluntarily.
We choose the best students. And we choose those that show leadership. It's not necessarily, the people in this program are not necessarily the most technically savvy people. They're students. They're students who show leadership skills. They're students who show the ability to engage with other faculty or other students. Because remember, they are the face of our program and they are just-in-time support in the classroom. And so you may not necessarily want the uber nerd, right? The wirehead. We do have 1 or 2 that are like that. The younger kids, the 6th and 7th graders, some of them, oof, wow. Who works with 6th and 7th and 8th graders here? Yeah, okay. You're a stronger man than I am. 6th and 7th and 8th graders are really interesting. They have so much free time. So much free time. And they really get the technology. And they really make it hum. It's a really interesting environment to see. So, yeah, all the time, right? How far can I push the envelope? How you put the boundaries in place, can I go past them? And remember also, let's go back to this whole theme of this. We're really trying to teach them to be good stewards and be good computer users and be good administrators. And one of those things is knowing that here's a line and you're not supposed to cross it, right? And if you choose to cross that line, then there are consequences. And so none of this is done in a vacuum, right? All the students are aware of it. They have to be aware of it because they've taken the driver's test, okay, as proof. I can't prevent that. I can't prevent a student from trying to jump over the hurdle or get out to the box. All we can do is say, here are the parameters, fairly broad, wide parameters for you to work in. Please work within them. And if you can't, then maybe you don't deserve to be an administrator.
So what sort of penalties are there?
Sure, well, they can lose admin access, right? Sometimes indefinitely, sometimes for a certain period of time. It depends on how severe the infraction is. In one rare case, we actually had laptops taken away from a student, which is almost antithetical to our whole program, is we want to really give these students laptops and use them 24/7. But in this case, the student proved that he simply was not capable of handling the responsibility of having a laptop. And that's really an outlier. But we did have one case, and it was decided with his parents and his advisor and the dean of students, you're just not going to have a laptop. And what's interesting is say that was grade 7. I'm not sure the exact date, but say it was grade 7. Now he's in grade 9 and he has a laptop again. So maybe it was a maturity issue, right? Okay, any other questions? I don't see anything. It's the lights. It's really, the lights are terrible up here. I can't see anything in the back. Is the driver's test different at different age levels? It is not. However, we do teach it slightly differently. We teach a 4th grader the driver's test in a different way that we teach a 9th grader the driver's test. And it's really about just being able to present that information. Like, some of the information is really just over the head of a 4th grader. You can't lay it out and expect them to really fully understand it. You need to walk them through it very slowly and carefully. And so it's taught differently. The information is taught differently, even though it's the same information. Okay.
So I'm going to wrap it up.
Are we
here?
pretty close? Yeah.
Just because I want to make sure that we all say thank you to Damien. I know he's able to stay and answer
Sure.
questions if you have more. Also wanted to let everybody know, if you haven't checked it out, there are many events happening. If you take a look at the Jamf Nation webpage, there's Jamf Nation User Conference, and among the event listing, there's some mini events where there's some folks that are going to meet up a few blocks away to watch soccer. There's folks doing other things. Locally, if you're looking for something to do tonight, you can meet up with some other Casper Suite users, some Jamf customers, and Jamf folks as well. We'll probably be attending some of those events, so have fun. But Damien, sincere thank you for